Yo, what up, though? I know y'all missed my face. I missed y'all too. I'm Deshaun Wallace, host of the DW Project. And after a brief hiatus, we back. I had to cross some T's and dot some I's, but we back in full effect. Episode 5 of season 2. I'm excited about this episode. I have a good friend of mine here, but before we give her proper due introduction, we got some house business to take care of. Some black business promo. We have here Anteel Tequila, made by power couple Don and Linnea Ferguson. The first black-owned tequila in the state of Michigan as well as the United States. It's found in select stores in Michigan. It looks it looks like it's ready to be open. I'm just putting it to you like that. But for episode 5, my guest is afternoon, evening, very good friend of mine, one of the hardest working women that I know. And she's laughing because she knows that. She's a successful business coach, mentor, mother, great friend, and all around hustler. She's the owner of E3 Business Coaching Company, as well as, what's the other one? Momentum Consultants. I'm sorry. Okay. So welcome to the show, my good friend, Miss Brandi Mitchell.
Yay! Thank you for having me.
It's been a long time coming. I know we've been playing tag with each other as far as catching up with scheduling, having some scheduling conflicts, but we have. You know, timing is everything, and here we are. Thank you for coming on.
It's all in divine timing, so absolutely. That means today is gonna be the day.
It's gonna be the day. It's gonna be a great episode. I already feel it. For starters, how's your 2023 been? And with us being within the fourth quarter, what's the biggest lesson that 2023 has taught you so far?
Ooh, that's a great question. 2023 has been awesome. It's definitely been a year of growth for me and my brands. But it's also been, you know what, every year is a year of lessons, right? I definitely have a growth mindset, so I think of everything as a teachable moment. My kids get annoyed by that. But I would say the biggest lesson I've learned so far, you know, what's going on with me this year, would be learning how to show myself grace.
Now, what type of things have you gone throughout this year or in the past that's gotten you to the point of where you feel like you should give yourself more grace?
No one's perfect, right? Perfection is not achievable, and trying to hold myself or others to that standard is unfair to me. And so just in my journey of everyday life and being a mom and things in work, that has happened. And then, you know, in therapy, we had to unpack that.
Now, with me knowing you, I know you're quite the perfectionist, to say the least. How hard or how difficult was it to adopt that theory of giving yourself more grace in terms of? Oh yeah, yourself?
It's super difficult. It's super difficult. It's something I have to be reminded of every day. What is that show? What is it, like Being Mary Jane? You remember that show?
Yeah.
How she had all those like Post-it notes all over the house?
Yeah.
I don't have Post-it notes, but I definitely use my mirrors with Expo markers, and I write stuff on my mirror. So on my mirror in the morning, remember to show yourself grace. You know, that's the first thing I see. So yeah, because I am a perfectionist and a little bit, you know, I like to have control of things. So that's something I have to remind myself of all the time.
Sagittarius way. I ain't say that out loud though. But that's good and that's beautiful. And I know that you're very capable of achieving that in terms of giving yourself more grace, but you work hard. And I've been telling you this for the longest. You probably need to give yourself a lot more grace. But even though we are like our harshest critics, so I know it's kind of hard to kind of adopt that. But you know, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So
it's crazy because I don't have a problem showing others grace. And you know, I see it in the world every day. And it's easy for me to be like, oh, I have grace for this person when they mistreat me or, this and that and the other, but not for myself. That's the hardest one. So, yeah.
Completely understood.
Can we open this?
Absolutely. Ladies first.
You should be opening this, but whatever.
I mean, you reached for it first.
Well, we could have opened it a while ago. Don't start. We're not about to argue on here.
I'm not about to argue with you. You got it. I'll open it and I'll pour. How about that? Can we compromise there?
There we go. We can compromise.
So let's start from the beginning. In terms of your upbringing, where you grew up, how you grew up. How about we delve into that?
Southfield in the house. Don't start that. We not doing that over here. Okay. I'm still mad that you don't have shirts repping Southfield in your collection. Let's talk about it.
You don't know that.
I haven't seen it yet, so we need to be on that. I told you about that a long time ago because I can't rep no East Side or West Side. I have to represent my side.
We accept honorable mentions as well.
Okay, so
enough of y'all love us.
Whatever, but yeah, so it's
This is fire. Shout out to the Fergusons, man. This is good. Damn.
Yes, nice and smooth.
But go ahead, I'm listening. I apologize.
But no, grew up in Southfield, like since '88. So I've definitely seen the city like come to life, and as we, ushered, the Black Mecca. I like to call Southfield the Black Mecca.
Okay.
Don't start over there, but of excellence. But I did not go to public school. I went to Shrine and Marion, an all-girls school. And then I went to Purdue and then Lawrence Tech. So engineering is my background. And I actually never used my engineering degree in the way that you would think, like in an actual engineering role. But all of the thought processes and things that I've learned in those engineering classes, I use in what I do.
Nice. Let's pause right there on the educational aspect. What was your family dynamic like growing up?
Yep. So I have mom, dad, and then my brother is 7 years younger than me. Most people might know him. He is quite a personality out here. He is Mr. Fuck a Job, aka Money Making Mitch. He too is an entrepreneur. He's always been. A lot of people when they meet us or they find out that that's my brother, they're like, "Y'all got the same parents?" And they're like, "Y'all were raised in the same house?" And I'm like, "But we have, our personalities are completely opposite." But I've learned to lean into that. And we balance each other out a lot now. Where before I used to be like, ugh. But now we work together a lot better when we learn to lean into our differences.
What?
But my parents stayed together until I was like 15.
Okay.
So.
Now, with them being, you said 15? Now, what was the dynamic after the fact?
The funny thing is, before my parents split up, I don't ever remember them fighting. So it was weird when they were like, "We're getting a divorce," and I was like, "Why?" Like, it was this thing that you thought like, oh, you would see it coming or you would hear your parents fighting, and I don't remember any of that. So that was kind of like shocking. And then even after we heard they were getting a divorce, my dad lived with us for at least a year or so after. He just moved rooms. And then after that, even, when he moved and got his own place, my dad still had a key to my mom's house for, I want to say, almost 10 years. And he worked afternoons. So he would come over, cook dinner, pick us up from school, bring us home, and then he would go to work. So he would cook dinner in the house, My mom didn't learn how to cook till I was in college. And she still says the best thing she knows how to make is reservations. So.
It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, so my dad was the one who cooked. So if my dad didn't cook, he took us over to, my grandma's house.
Okay.
And my grandma, for the record, lived on the west side. So.
Okay. Okay.
Dexter Davidson area.
Grandma gangster, that's what's up.
Look, I didn't even know running numbers was a thing, but I knew how to take them.
Really?
But I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew how to pick up the phone, write on the yellow pad, but I didn't know what it was,
Wow. Now, with your dad still, with your mother and father still kind of resuming, almost like the optics of still being together, did that give room for confusion? Did that cause confusion amongst?
No, because surprisingly, like within maybe a year and a half, 2, both of them met their current partner, so they're still together with the people that they met, and they stayed together. I call him my stepdad. They're not officially married, but they've been together. My mom has had a ring for a long time. They've just never gotten married. And then my dad's wife, I said what I said. They've been together the same amount of time. So, yeah.
Okay.
So there was no ever like, oh, my parents are getting back together. No, that was never a thing. But I do appreciate the fact that they kept it cute, they kept it cordial, nice. And that was a very good example of what a relationship dissolving should look like. And I appreciated that.
Now, growing up in your household, what's the one thing that you took away from it that you still utilize to this day?
There's so many things. I think there's lessons, like your parents are different, right? So like I said, the conflict resolution as far as like how they parted, that was something big. My mom has taught me a lot of lessons. In the beginning, the mother and daughter dynamic, right? It's always crazy. And I think that I've learned that mothers raise their daughters, fathers raise their sons. So whereas my brother and dad have this, dynamic, me and my mom have this dynamic. Whereas me and my dad are like, what's up? We don't have that contentiousness that me and my mom do. And really, me and my mom have just started to work through that, I would say, in the past 2-3 years. So in the beginning, I would say, if you asked me 2-3 years ago, what I learned from my mom was a lot of the stuff that I did not want to be. But now that we're starting to work through that, I'm learning the why behind it. Right? From my father, I learned game. Right? Like, my father taught me, my father does not believe in God. And so my father taught me, never believe in something blindly. Always learn how to question things so that when somebody asks you why you believe in what you believe, you can adequately defend your stance. That's a big lesson because, people, you've seen my political rants on Facebook. We don't even have to get in all that, right? And that's what I get upset about, because people will be like, well, this is my stance. And I'll be like, I'll start poking the bear, and then everybody gets sensitive. But why do you believe what you believe? And that sent me on a journey throughout, I would say, all of college about like religion and all of that. So that was good. And I never, I have my own relationship with God, and nobody can tell me my way looks completely different. I don't think I fit into anybody's box, right? And then the other biggest lesson my father taught me was, you teach people how to treat you. Therefore, you never ask a question that you're not ready to hear the answer to. Because if you answer it, or if they answer it in a way that you do not like, and you react badly, you have then taught that person to lie to you. So,
wow.
Yeah, you got to be able to take in what somebody's telling you, even if you don't like it. You got to be able to take that and learn how to navigate through that conversation, what that looks like, learn how to seek to understand what they're saying and why and all of that. And that is big, not only in romantic relationships, but even my relationships with my children, because that's why I feel like they are able to come to me and talk to me about stuff, because they know, like, oh, mom might not like what I'm about to say, but she's going to listen. So, yeah.
Now, with you just speaking to the fact that your mother and yourself had a contentious relationship, and with you being a mother yourself, was there any point in time where your relationship with your mother affected how you parented your own children?
Yes.
How
I said that quick. Because with my first child, with my first daughter, it was almost like, even though I did not want to be like my mother, and to some things I went extreme, like the extreme opposite, right? So whereas my mother was very like, she always had this perfect perception. She was always concerned about what it looked like. Perception was key to her. I didn't care. So I talked to my daughter openly about my mistakes, where my mother didn't do that with me. So I was thinking she was perfect, not knowing that she had been through stuff, and had she told me that, she would have been way more relatable, and I would have felt like I had the permission to fail. When I was a mom, I was very open about my failures with my kids. So it was different. But then on the same note, like just Black mothers in general, like there's certain things we just do across the board, right? Because I said so, you're not allowed to question me. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't until my second daughter that I learned, wait, that's wrong too. Because, man, this is a whole different conversation, because we can go down a whole different rabbit hole with this. But Black parents had to teach their children like that, because back in the day, you got to think of where that came from. The origin of that is slavery. The parent had to teach that child to learn how to listen without questioning, because if they did, that could have been a whipping, or like being sold. That was the difference of life and death. That's why parents acted that way. Like, in turn, though, they raised sheep. So you think about the generation of the baby boomers, right? They were like, oh, the definition of success is having this job, the plant job or the corporate job, and making this money and going to college, and that was success. Didn't matter about credit or debt, right? Because that's what we were told was successful. But had they learned how to be free thinkers, like our generation is, and now you see the entrepreneurship and all of that, it comes from us learning how to figure it out and start to question and push back against those norms, which is okay. And we should have been given that, like, we should have been told that's okay a long time ago.
Absolutely.
And so, my younger daughter, she questions everything, sometimes to a fault. But I learned with her, I taught her to learn how to question, but it was only after she had the spirit of discernment. Because otherwise, kids can get disrespectful, right?
Absolutely.
But once your child has the spirit of discernment, then it's okay to say, you can question why I said or told you to do this. You can question. So at school, for example, the dress code, she bucks back against that dress code and questions it. And she says it's sexist and all of these things. And she, stands on that, and will go to a school board meeting and put her comment on record and all of that. And I think that that's phenomenal.
Healthy.
It's very healthy. It's annoying sometimes, but it's healthy.
Well, She may just be a reflection of yourself. I'm pretty sure that you had your boisterous moments.
Absolutely.
Jumping out the window.
Absolutely.
But shout out to your family. Shout out
Yeah.
to your family. Much continued success to y'all as far as life lessons and achieving love and everything else across the board. You mentioned that you went to Purdue and Lawrence Tech.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn from both that you still apply to this day? Whether it's from curriculum, whether it's just from life lessons, what did each institution teach you?
Both institutions were PWIs, right? So primarily white institutions. I learned that to white people, you are just a number.
Can you elaborate on that, please? If you don't mind.
It's easy to get lost in the sauce in college, especially like a black girl going, coming from Michigan, going to Indiana, which I did not know at the time was the home of the Klan.
Oh boy, yeah.
So that was a culture shock, right? So, while we had our occasional scuff ups here, it was a totally different culture shock, in the way, the dynamic of black and white people there. Indiana, I guess, is part of the South. Not really, but they're, right on that line. But they don't care if you went to class or not. And that's just more money in their pocket if you didn't and you failed. Great. Take the class again. Give me more money.
Give me more money.
Right?
Word.
When I went to visit my friends at HBCUs, I was just in awe that, like, when they didn't show up to class, their teachers were following up with them the next time they did. Like, you missed class. Why? It was somebody hold them accountable. And I don't know too many of my friends that went to HBCUs that did not finish within 4 years.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, when you saw the different dynamics between the PWI and the HBCUs, did it make you regret going to? Really? Talk about that a little bit.
I definitely, if I did it over again, I would. This is a conversation me and my brother have all the time. He was allowed to go to public school, right? So he was allowed to be around where I was an ink spot in a bowl of milk all of my educational career, right? And even professional in corporate America, right? He was allowed to flourish amongst Black excellence, right? He has a confidence about him that I had to learn how to get and grow into in my adult life. But he had that confidence because he, had middle school, high school, growing up amongst his peers. Now, he decided to not finish college. He was like, I don't need this. I don't want to work for nobody. I already know that that's not going to be the end goal. I'm not about to waste money and get a degree. Not for me. But again, having that confidence to step out, and he realized he was going to be an entrepreneur way longer than I did. So that was one of the things that, as going to a PWI versus an all Black college, or, even in high school and elementary school, he had that I didn't have. So I definitely, with my daughter, I would say she can have the option to go to either because she went to her high school now is a, public school, predominantly Black. So she knows how to function and she has that confidence. Now I would say you can go to either because you have that self-confidence. Whereas I didn't. And I should have had some different experiences in my education.
Now, going to a PWI, did that actually show you how to work certain rooms as well? as far as getting
Absolutely.
to.
Code switch, all of that. I mean, come on. Yes, absolutely. I can code switch like no other. But you need to that's a skill you need to have out here, right? That, and I would say that, but also learning how to be underestimated at all times. There are like, not only was I have engineering, right? So not only was I one of the only black students, the few black students in those classes, but I was also one of the only women most of the time. So I remember in my fluid power systems class, I will never forget this. We had class and we learned, it met at the Purdue airport. And we learned about fluid power systems on a plane, right? So we would work on the plane. And when it came time to pick lab partners, nobody wanted to be my partner. Nobody wanted to be my partner. I had to be put with somebody, right? Until the first test. After the first test, and it was time to pick lab partners again, then it was like, oh, I'll be your partner. I'll be your partner. So always being like, underestimated. And being okay with that. And not feeling the need to shout, hey, I can do this immediately, right? But being okay, being like, okay, that's okay. I'll be the dark horse here. I'll let you underestimate, and I can show you better than I can tell you.
Understood.
Period.
100%. Now, leaving school, you had quite the stint at the infamous Quicken Loans Corporation here in the city of Detroit. Talk about that. What was that experience like for you?
I actually had a great experience. I fell in love with the culture at Quicken. I went to Quicken, what was supposed to be very temporary, because with an engineering degree, I was a stay-at-home mom. So right after I graduated, I actually stayed at home for a couple of years. And my kid's dad and I decided I wouldn't go to work until they were old enough to be of school age. So that was something that was very important to me. So when it was time to go to school or go back to work, it was right when the bailout was happening. So all of my contacts at GM and stuff, because my mom worked for GM, my dad worked for Ford. I had great networking relationships. My mom always told me it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? So my mom's friend group was, to this day, vice president, the former vice president of DTE, and I knew all of the big executives at GM, and all of my internships were there. But they told me, if you come in right now, you will be severely underpaid. Stay at home for a few years or go somewhere else. So that's what I did. And I went to Quicken. And then when I did get the call to go to GM, it was, hey, we need you in a plant in Chicago, a city right outside of Chicago. We need you there in 2 weeks. I'm like, I can't move my family in 2 weeks.
Right.
Okay, well, we'll put you up in corporate housing, and they'll give you time to find something. And then maybe in about 2-3 months, we'll give you some time off so you can move your family. What? If you don't care about my family now, before I've signed on the dotted line, how are you going to care about my family once I've signed that paperwork? You're not. And I had gotten very spoiled with the culture of Quicken. And I mean, back then it was smaller, right? So Dan Gilbert's office was like right there. It was an open door policy. You could go in there and pick his brain and ask him questions. And Bill Emerson, the number 2, same thing. He would walk the aisle. I remember the first time I met him, the first time I saw him, he was just sitting there in the aisle talking to somebody, and my friend and I walked by, and we were like, who is this creeper? And they were like, did you just call him a creeper? And I'm like, yeah, like, who is that? And they were like, oh my God, she doesn't know. But of course they didn't tell me. So then he comes over and we had, our areas decorated for like tailgating. And, we all had, and so he's like, oh, okay, this is cool, And so he's like, oh, who's your favorite team? And I was like, Purdue, of course. And he was like, oh, myself, I love Penn State. Now, had I been paying attention, everybody knew Bill Emerson was, a big Penn State fan. He was a Penn State graduate. Still didn't click to me. That's who I'm talking to. I started talking trash to the man. Like, Penn State, I'm so sorry for you. You know how I can be when I'm talking trash. So this is what I'm doing to this man. And he is sitting here cracking up. And he's like, is she for real? Is she this comfortable with me? Or does she not know who I am? He did not know. And in the corner of my eye, I see my leader being like, he's like shocked and awe, but also laughing. And I'm like, what is he laughing at? I'm confused. And so finally, he and I, continue our banter for a little while. And he leaves and he's like, all right, well, I'll see you next time, Purdue. I'm like, all right, Penn State, good luck with that. And then when he leaves, my leader comes over. He was like, do you know who you were talking to? I'm like, no, who was that? He was like, Bill Emerson. I was like, oh, I thought that was just the dude I called the creeper last week. And he was like, oh my God. But that's how, And then eventually over time, I told him the story of how I called him a creeper. And he just thought it was so funny.
Yeah.
And, even until, toward the end, he still remembered that story. And it was something we laughed about. So I loved my time at Quicken. It allowed me to have work-life balance. But one of the things I learned from there is there's no such thing as work-life balance. Because work is a part of life. So you just got to learn to figure it out, right? And the lessons you learn at work, you should be able to apply to life. And they'll help you. And same thing. Life lessons, if you apply them at work, will help you succeed and get further. So stop drawing that line in the sand and saying, this is my life, this is my work, and keep them separate. No, it's all one thing. Just get in there and do it, and work hard, play just as hard.
Understood. And I agree wholeheartedly. Upon you leaving Quicken, was there any particular thing that caused you to actually leave when you did? Or did you just feel like seasonally it was just your time to move on and transition to something else?
A little bit of both. Okay. So in 2017 is when I started having health issues. And I started going through that journey. It ended up with me being diagnosed with epilepsy. During that time, I didn't work. I took about 10 months off work. And it was hard. It was the most challenging time in my life because...
Not to cut you off, I apologize.
No,
for those who don't know, can you give a synopsis of what epilepsy actually is?
So it is a seizure disorder. There's all different types of epilepsy. So you can have different types of seizures. You can have grand mal, which are the more, a lot of people, when they think of epilepsy, they probably think of grand mal seizures where you fall, you might have bite your tongue, all of that kind of stuff. Petite mal, which is a little less severe, but I have something called absent seizures. So you might not even realize I'm having a seizure because it's almost like blank face. The best way to describe it when I tell people is, how your computer freezes and then you have to stop and reboot it? That's kind of exactly what happens with my seizures.
Wow.
My brain freezes, I freeze up, I can't speak, so I have no verbal, but my eyes are blinking, And I didn't find this out until after, but I go on autopilot. So I've had a seizure when I was driving. And I actually drove and followed all the signals, the traffic laws, everything. You can say, put your code, unlock your phone. I can unlock my phone. I just cannot verbally respond to you. And when I come out of a seizure, I do not know anything about it. I didn't know I had one. I don't remember what happened, nothing.
So even in the midst of you having a seizure, you're still cognitively aware of your mechanisms as far as to do things that are asked of you. But after the fact, you don't remember anything?
Nope. Nothing.
Wow.
And so it's different because most people who have absence seizures don't have that cognitive ability. So my doctor's, he's the head of neurology at Beaumont. I am a case study patient because most people do not have the cognitive side of it. Usually when they have a seizure, they freeze, that's it. But because I have the cognitive side, that means the seizure is crossing over between left and right brain. So I'm a case study. Not fun because it took longer to diagnose that I was having seizures.
Now, once you actually received the diagnosis of having epilepsy, what was your initial reaction to receiving that diagnosis?
I think it was the reaction wasn't about having epilepsy because I don't think, and maybe this is something that like I'm grateful for the doctor that I had. He's like, this is not a disability. Don't treat it like one, right? But I feel like it was more so to the loss of my identity.
Really?
Because when I was going through this process, I had to stop working. So up until while all this is going on, my identity was lost because I would say, "Hi, I'm Brandi. I'm a training leader at Quicken Loans. I'm a mother. I'm this. I'm that." But it was about my identity lied in what I did, not necessarily who I was as a person. So I lost my identity, and that was the more shocking and hard. That was the hardest thing to deal with because when you can't work and you can't do those things, and I've relied so long on being independent, and and my independence is huge to me. I don't need any, I can figure it out. I can get it done. I can take care of my kids. I can be a mother. I can make it happen. And I couldn't even be in the house alone. I couldn't take a shower without someone being there. I couldn't cook. I could not do anything because if I took a shower and fell or had a seizure, what would happen? If I started cooking and had a seizure and there was grease on the stove, what would happen? Right? So I couldn't do anything. That was so traumatic. But luckily my doctor, that's when I started therapy. And luckily that's when I started, and I have never stopped.
We were talking off air about divine timing and how effective that is and how useful it is in terms of us getting to development of certain stages and seasons of our life. Now, do you feel like if you hadn't been diagnosed with epilepsy, do you feel like that there had been a place to where you could have unlearned what you knew at that time to get you to where you are right now? You feel like you would have been able to, under your own will, say, you know what, I can operate beyond Quicken. Like you just said, as far as work was your identity of who you were in that space. If you wouldn't have had that time of epilepsy being diagnosed, do you feel like that you would have been able to get to a different season without that?
I think it expedited my growth, right? Because it's so crazy. Because when all of this was happening, I feel like I was at the top of my career at Quicken. That's when I was the happiest, right? I was fully functioning in my comfort zone. But I was doing the orientations at Quicken, right? And I give this speech and I talk about what is your purpose, right? And finding that purpose and talking about like your purpose is right in the middle. It's the intersectionality of what you like to do, who you love, what you like to do, what you're good at, and what makes you money, right? Those 4 circles coming together, that's your purpose. Your comfort zone is the section where 3 of them intersect, right? When you're making money and, oh, I'm sorry, there's 5. It's also what the world needs. So it's also your contribution to the world, right? So there's that intersectionality where you're hitting 3 of the 5. That's your comfort zone. Your purpose is when you're hitting 5 of 5. I didn't realize that I was sitting in my comfort zone. And God was throwing them pebbles.
Absolutely.
Right?
As he always does.
As he does, and I wasn't listening. And
as
then he threw the rock, which was me getting epilepsy. And I had to sit my butt down, right? And so when I went back to work, and the first time I gave that speech again, I was so conflicted. Like my spirit was so convicted. I knew that day that like my last day was coming.
Really?
So I went back in August, and my last day was November 1st.
It just didn't feel the same? It just didn't feel the same going back?
Nope. And it was hard because I had always talked to Dan about like, eventually I was going to leave and have my own company and all of that. But I had a 5-year plan for that to happen. This was now, and I had a mentor at Quicken. That's what I love, is that they encourage you to have mentors and, leadership mentors. And so I went to her and I said, I'm so nervous. Like, I'm about to leave and this was not the plan. Like, we got a 5-year plan. This is happening in 3 months. Like, what do I do? What do I do? And she was like, you do. You just do.
You just do.
And yeah, I had to step out on faith and get in that stretch zone, because your comfort zone is between, your purpose is right after the stretch zone that is right in between your comfort zone and your purpose.
100%.
You gotta be uncomfortable.
You have to be. You gotta be uncomfortable in order to get to certain places that you may aspire to get to. And a lot of times we don't see it when it's not packaged the way that we want it packaged.
Exactly.
And when it's not packaged that way and it's foreign or it's, different than what we may have envisioned it to be, we trying to trick ourselves out of the spot that's meant for us to be in that spot.
Absolutely.
And it's a very slippery slope, but I'm glad you finally paid attention.
Yeah.
Finally paid attention.
I had to.
Absolutely. Now starting E3, your business coaching company, was that in the cards before Quicken, or did your ordeal with epilepsy kind of expedite you being into that space?
I knew I wanted to start a business. I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
So, training and development was something that I fell in love with. Even in my internships, now that I look back at GM when I was still in school. But when I got to Quicken and I was working, I eventually moved on to training and development. And that's when I realized, ooh, this is it. I'm in my zone. I love training and development. But when I started making those classes, and the first classes, when I say I was at the top of my game, I had the opportunity to make a training series that wasn't about training people for their job at Quicken. It was about training them on skills, transferable skills, like Credit 101 and financial fundamentals, written like the art of communication, all of that kind of stuff. I had so much fun working on those classes. And I was like, oh, this is where it's at. And even talking to people and being in our community, I realized our community doesn't know the value of entrepreneurship. We don't know how to do this. And so that's what made me want to go down that road. And that's why I started E3.
Now, along the way that you started E3, give us a rundown of some of the clientele that you've enlisted in terms of upon you starting your business.
So E3, I had, client, I call them like wantrepreneurs. So people who,
I like that.
Yeah, who just have some ideas and they don't necessarily, they need them flushed out, right? And so we sit down and we flush them out, and maybe I say, listen, you're not quite ready, but flush that out a little bit more, and then let's come back, because we all know starting a business seems glamorous and everybody's like, oh yeah, I want to have my own business and I think it's going to be easy. But then we start sitting down and like when I get to start talking to them about the mechanics and explain to them, this is not an overnight success. You're going to have to live the life that 90% of Americans do not want to live, to eventually live the life that only 10% of Americans can live. So you're going to have to get out here and get it out the mud.
Get in the field for real.
Yeah. I went from, making $80,000+ a year and walking away. And before I walked away, minimizing all of my bills, got rid of my car note, you know what I mean? Like, made it so that my living expenses were way smaller than what I was used to, so that in that transition, I was going to be okay. And that was hard. Like, I'm used to shopping and buying. And I remember, what was that Peloton bike? That first that was coming out, right? And I was like, oh, now normally working in corporate America, I would just go get the damn Peloton bike. Let me get a Peloton. Everybody else is getting a Peloton. But then I was like, oh, I can't get a Peloton anymore. Dang. You know what I'm saying? But that was my first realization that I am not going to be able to live how I normally would live. And so, but a lot of times having that first initial conversation with a lot of people, that's when you weed out the people who are serious about being entrepreneurs. And I can say, come back, baby, after you really think about this. Or, all right, you're ready to move on, right? And so I've helped people sometimes just in a one-on-one session, a couple sessions, and then sometimes they've retained me as their client for a while. So one of my biggest clients is Better Not Broken, Marvin Cotton Jr. He is a Amazon bestseller. He is a exoneree. He spent 20 years wrongfully convicted, came out, and we met within his first 3 or 4 months out of prison. And he said, I can remember this to this day, he sat in my office and talked about what he wanted to do. And I was like, okay, I'm writing it down as our goals. And me silently thinking you're not going to be able to do all of this in the amount of time you want to do it. But it was a lesson for me because he did. And he wrote that book in his first 2 years out and hit the bestsellers list. And he ran for office. And Better Not Broken is not only a book, but it's a brand. He's one of he's a top motivational speaker. He speaks to children. He speaks to colleges. He speaks to lawyers, future lawyers. He speaks to legislators. He's out here.
Yeah.
He's hot.
Yeah, he outside.
He's outside.
He's outside.
Yeah. So the organization of exonerees is another one. It started as a support group, and then they had the idea like, let's not just be a support group. Let's get out here in these streets and make these moves and really work for exonerees and be a support system to them. And I was around to get the train out of the station, and now they're out here. I mean, they are out here.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to sit back and see some of those brands really take off.
Now, with you being a business coach and a business consultant, what are your top 5 elements to be a successful business coach or business consultant?
Well, let's see.
Well, before you even answer that, are these elements that you already knew prior to getting into that space, or you just learn them trial by fire?
You learn them along the way. You gotta have vision. You gotta be willing to have that vision. And it's funny because I used to always say, like, for relationship wise, a man with dreams needs a woman with a vision. Right? I say that all the time for like men and women relationships. But as a business coach, you got to be able to have a vision. As an entrepreneur in general, like, you know, they say you got to be able to think outside the box. You got to be able to see the box that isn't there as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
So that's one. Don't underestimate your client's dreams. So I just talked about that, right? Allow your clients to fail forward. Yeah, there are lessons there. Okay. So sometimes, you know, here we go, me being a control freak, right? When you see something coming, and the mom in me too, right? You don't want your baby to scrape their knee, but sometimes scraping their knee teaches them a lesson they needed to learn.
Absolutely.
Same thing with the business coach. Sometimes you got to allow them to fail forward. It's a lesson. It's a teachable moment. You have to allow them to do that sometimes. Everyone is not coachable. That one was a hard one because you know how I am. Like, I can imagine that being. I can help. Yeah. No, you can't help everyone.
Can't help everybody.
You can't help everyone, and you can't keep bumping your head up against the wall when you tell somebody to do something. And you're telling them and saying, this is the way to go, this is the way to go, and they're not listening, it makes you sick. And for me, you know, that's how I am. So everyone is not coachable. That is a big one. And I had to walk away from a big client because of that.
Now, how was that for you, given that you came to the realization that client wasn't coachable?
Oh, I felt like a failure.
Yeah, how difficult was that for you to even acknowledge that I can't help this person?
It felt like a failure. I felt like a failure. That's where that learning to give yourself grace. Because it's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about anything that I've done. It's about them. You know? Maybe they were not in the space maybe they're not where they need to be to hear what you've got to say, right? That's just like when you see your friends in something, right? Sometimes we gotta learn how to just be quiet and watch our friends because they might not be in the season to hear whatever it is. So that's their season. They're not there, right? And then I had to learn not to take that personally. And it's nothing against them either. We're just not in sync and we're not in each other's season. We're not lined up. Now, could we work together in the future? Maybe. Could it be, you know, I don't know what God has in store, right? So maybe we will, maybe we won't. That's not for me to decide. But the last one is, at the end of the day, it's not your business. Like, it's your client's business. So you have to be okay letting it go and not having the last word. Now,
with you being a self-proclaimed, at times, control freak, I know how difficult that may have been for you. Was there a particular moment or instance that made you want to snap out of that and say, you know what, I have to relinquish some of this control to let clients know that it's their business and not mine? Or was it a combination of things?
I think it was just one instance where I learned it. And it might seem like the silliest little argument, but my client and I were arguing about a photo shoot and who we were going to use as the photographer. And I wanted to use one photographer and he wanted to use another one. And I was like, no, my photographer is better. And I had all of these reasons. And then I had even done all this research as to why, and, you know, and he was just like, no, I'm not using that photographer. And I was like, you know, and I remember like, and he wasn't disrespectful or anything. And then, but I remember like walking away from him, and I remember going to sit in my car and crying about it because I was just so frustrated. And he could tell that I was so upset, and he came over to me and he said, listen, this is not about you.
Yeah.
You know, and he gave me a hug and we talked about it, and, you know, we walked away okay. But it was that moment where it was like, yeah, this really isn't up to me. This is his business. So, you know, you got to be okay. Let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I want to touch on real quick, that I think a lot of women in prominent positions tend to deal with. I'm gonna just touch on it real quick.
Mm-hmm.
How does you being in the position that you're in affect the dating aspect of the guys that you may or may not attract?
I think, well, first of all, a lot of my clients are men. So I'm around men a lot. And so it's a good thing and a bad thing because they're like big brothers and they're so protective of me. Like I remember trying to be slick, going out on this date one night and not telling, you know, the guys that I was even seeing somebody or I liked somebody. And I went to They Say, and the waitress set us at the table, and guess who was next to
Lord, dude.
My client and his now wife. And he looked at me like, oh, you call yourself being on a date and not telling me? Like, oh, this is not about to happen. And he took the gentleman and they went to the bathroom and had words. And I'm like, y'all not gonna do this to me.
They had words?
I mean, yeah, you know, he
Damn.
like, you know, like a big brother type thing, you know?
I get it.
And it was good, but I like having them, you know, but some men do get intimidated by me being around so many men that they're like, I know I can't be on no BS because she got all of these guys around. But then also because of my demeanor, they also know they can't be on no BS. So that's a whole nother thing. You got to come correct because I'm not about the BS. And I've been single so long. Like I say, I'm okay being by myself. Actually, I like sleeping in my big bed diagonally. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to be something special to get me to move over and share. Okay?
For the love of Brandi coming soon. DW Productions and shit.
We going to have a dating show?
Yeah, we gonna put you on the dating show, man.
That would be hilarious.
It would be.
Because, you know, men don't know how to ask women out nowadays. And it is my biggest pet peeve. If you say, so when am I going to see you? Okay. When you say that to me, I'd be like, I don't know. Well, I got this, and this to do. And that's how I respond. And so dudes will be like, oh, I guess you weren't interested. No, I didn't say that, but you need to learn how to use your words, sir, and say, hey, I would like to take you out on a date. Are you free on Saturday at 7? And if I am, I'll say, why, yes, I am. Or if I'm not available to 8, I'll say, oh, I'm available at 8 though. But because you can't use your words and come straight, I'll help. We can tap dance around this table together. And I'm not about to make it easy for you. I'm not about to give you the answer to the test now.
100%.
Why you look so DW.
No, this is goddamn Anteel, but whatever. But no, this has been a really, really fantastic episode. A lot of jewels to take in and absorb. I thank you for your time. I truly, truly do. This has been another fantastic episode of the DW Project. Any last words you want to get anybody, your social media handles, or how they can get in touch with you if they have any business inquiries and anything?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to say is don't be afraid to invest in yourself. You are the greatest investment with the biggest return on investment you will ever have.
Say that one more time, bitch.
Don't be afraid to invest in yourself. You are the biggest. You'll get the biggest return on investment when you do that. It's nothing better than doing that. I need to be better because I'm investing so much in my clients that I have not built my website yet. I have the name, I have the domain, but I have not built it. But you can reach me on social media, Brandi Mitchell, Brandi Mitchell, or E3 Business Coaching on Facebook, and on Instagram, Momentum Consulting.
Look here, man. I had a great time this episode. Thanks to Anteel Tequila.
Cheers.
Oh boy, cheers to this. I like this. You want to get
It's
a bottle after we
smooth,
leave.
right?
Smooth as hell, man.
And the Blanco comes in so many different flavors. You got that blood orange.
What we talking about? Coconut lime.
Coconut lime. Oh, yes.
Support black businesses, please. Please. If you go
She's
drink.
the first black woman tequila brand owner.
Drink black and drink local. How about that? This has been another episode of the DW Project. Thank you to the Brave Ambition Radio Network, Detroit CEO Media, for the continued success and the continued opportunities for me to be here on this platform. And as I always say, I must be doing something right because I'm still on this motherfucker. So this has been episode 5 of the DW Project with my great friend and great guest, Brandi Mitchell. All have a good night. See y'all next time for episode 6. Peace.